And then Jesus spit on him. And it said, Jesus asked him the question, what do you see? And he said, I see men as trees. In other words, I see people as objects. I want to ask you a question. How do you see people? How do you see people? Because a lot of times we see people as objects. We see people that we can manipulate, people that we can use, people that we use for our purposes. I love the metaphor of the Israelites were in Egypt and the wilderness wanderings and the promised land. And I liken it, what we see here is that we can be saved, and I'm not talking about salvation. We can be saved as Israel was taken out of Egypt. That was the land of bondage. But many times we think we go from the land of bondage to the promised land. But it very rarely works that way. There is always an interlude of the wilderness wanderings. And the sad fact is, many people spend 40 years in the wilderness wandering around. The sad fact is, many people can live their whole life in the wilderness wandering around and never really get to the promised land. Do you realize that when you become saved, you can still be lazy? Do you realize that when you become saved, you can still be the biggest gossip in the community? When you become saved, it doesn't necessarily mean you have all the patience in the world. It doesn't mean that you automatically become good financially. It doesn't mean that you have a good head for business anymore. You can become saved and still spend your time in the wilderness. And what I try to liken it to is what you have in 2 Corinthians 1:10, where it talks about the Trinity of salvation. I have been saved, I will be saved, and I am being saved. In other words, I have been saved by the blood of Jesus Christ. That's called justification. I have been saved because of what He has done. That's past tense. And I will be saved when I die. I will be saved when He comes again. That is future tense. That's what we call salvation. But then there's that sticky part in the middle. And that's what we call sanctification. That is the idea of growth. That is the idea of maturity. That is the idea that I am supposed to become what I am. Look at it from another point to where you have children. There is a point to where a 2-year-old, they looks beautiful over there, but if he's 15 years old doing that, there's something wrong. Okay, you have to have growth and you have to have a maturity there. So we as Christians have to take it upon ourselves to grow through the wilderness wanderings. And sometimes it may be months, sometimes it may be years, sometimes it may be a whole lifetime. And all of us know people. In fact, we touched on it this morning in Sunday school. People that are supposed to be Christians that don't act like Christians. I don't know whether they're Christians or not, and it's not for me to judge. But you would like to think that there's some growth going on for people. That we can get to the point to where God can take us into the promised land, and that is that we can have the virtues that we should have to where God can give us some peace in our life, and give us some glory in our life, and give us some joy in our life. You know, we can get out of Egypt. We can get out of that mess and still have that mess in us. You remember when they got out and Moses was up on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights? You remember that? And he was gone, and what did they do? They built the golden calf. What did they do? They reverted back to what they had known in Egypt. And there are many people that are brought out of Egypt, but they still have Egypt in them. And that's why we can be in the wilderness and we can struggle with things and we can fall back into things and we can be sinful in things, because although we have gotten out of Egypt, Egypt has not gotten out of us.